It is time to track expenses, and for me, I'm tracking from March 30th through April 6th in this video. Hey Legacy Builders, welcome back to Mind Your Money. Every week I sit down on Sunday and I track all of the expenses from two places, my operating account and my bills account. And of course, we have a little bit of balance forward, so money left over from the previous budgeting period, and I'm tracking everything that has gone in and come out of my operating account from there, and then also from my bills account. Now, unfortunately, I filmed this video on a day where it was very gray outside. Not a lot of sun, but I'm trying to get as much natural light and artificial light as I can to make this video clear for you to view. I hope it's okay. So, we are tracking all of the income and all of the expenses with an emphasis on three main categories: food, groceries, and gas. And so when I got started with my April budget, we had $214.97 in our operating account, right, on the 30th of March. And then on the 31st of March, I had my first deposit of income from Amazon, and that was $2.87, and then also from Ibotta for $38.30, and then Fidelity took out $35 to be invested into my IRA, and then I went and purchased gas for $20. And then also we had an interest payment of 7 cents from this operating account. And on the 31st, I left our balance at $201.21. So now everything else that's listed here are all of the purchases and, transfers out to savings and whatnot, and to pay down debt within that first week of the month of April. So I'm going to go through line by line, and I'm going to use my calculator. Hopefully you can see everything clearly so you can track while I track. And if you have your budget workbook or whatever you use to manage your money, please take that out now and let's do this together. All right, so the first transaction after the 31st was on April 2nd. So we had 2 days of no spending, basically no money movements. And I went to CVS and I made a small purchase towards my household for $7.57. So I'm going to subtract that from the balance, and I believe that amount was right. It is $193.64. And then on the second, again, I went to Stop and Shop, and this was a food purchase. All I bought was milk that day. I bought 2 containers of milk for $12.78, and that brought our balance down to $180.86. And then there was a deposit on the 3rd, okay, for $298. This was a portion of my husband's income, and that brought our balance up to $478.86. Now, I had put aside some money for myself to spend, and I didn't have enough cash on the day I went to the beauty salon to get a waxing done, and it cost me $16.24. I had to use my debit card for that, so I labeled this as a miscellaneous, coming from miscellaneous category. That brought our balance down to $462.62, and then I had an inflow of $93 from our bills account so that I could cover our cell phone bill. And then on the 4th, we transferred our tithe out. So these are all of our money moves, okay? Starting with the tithe of $110. We always give first at the top. That brought our balance down to $445. Then next we had a transfer to our transportation fund, which is a part of our savings goals for the month of April. And so after we transferred that out, we're left with $345, okay? And then I Zelled another $25 to our Ally account that houses our milestone birthday fund. I'm sorry that the life keeps shifting. It's hard when you're not dealing with natural light. So after we transferred the $25, it brought our balance down to $320, and then we transferred $450 to our mortgage account. Now this is showing that we're in the negative right now because I had forgotten to include the deposit that came in, but I'm going to track line by line. So after the mortgage money transferred, we're in the negative by $129. Then we transferred $205 to our bills account, we're in the negative $334. And then we transferred $12 to our annual bills fund, and that puts us in the negative at $346. And then on the 4th, there is a deposit, the income of $500. So that $500 brings us up to a positive balance of $153.62. And then on the 4th, we transferred $5.62 to the bills account to cover a small extra debt payment. And then on the 5th of April, I went back to fill up the gas tank again. And this time I filled all the way up and I spent $40. So we're over budget for gas already. And then also on the 5th, our cell phone payment hit. And so that's basically covered by the $93 that I transferred in to the operating account from the bills account. And the last expense actually happened on Sunday, April 6th, the start of the second week, and that was a transfer in of $40 so that I could cover the overage for the gas. And that brings our final balance at the very start of week 2 of April's budget to $55. So that's where we are at the beginning of week 2, and now I need to pull out my highlighter so I can highlight those categories I talked to you about: the gas purchases, the household purchase, and the food purchase. And then that's it for the first week. I like to highlight those because I will do like a weekly check-in for those 3 categories to see exactly how much we spent, because it's helping me to see exactly what our habits are and how we can, better, I think, project or forecast how much we really should be spending. Right now, we're in a really tight season with all of the savings that we have to get done. So we're not really adjusting our budget as we see the trend, but it's nice to know what we've been doing so we can, plan for the future budgets. I may have to change how we're budgeting going into the 3rd quarter, because right now for quarter 2, we have savings that we have to get done. So that means our food budget and even our household budget is not as much. Plus, we did do a stock up of all of our household needs in March. So it may be that we don't need to increase our household budget. Food is a different story, but we're working it out as best we can and pivoting where we need to. So those are the 4 expenses. Gas we bought twice, food just one purchase for the first week and from this budget, and then household was a small expense. Now moving on to our bills account. We were fortunate enough to have a starting balance because we got ahead of our bills in March with our tax refund. So our balance at the beginning of April was $579.70. And then we had interest, I guess you would call that an inflow, of 4 cents. And then we started paying bills. We paid our Spectrum for $93. We paid our electricity bill for $53.61. We paid towards our Geico insurance of $150. We're trying to get even further ahead of this. I paid our life insurance policies 1 and 2, and that brought our balance down to $214.75. So this is where I have to track and fill in the balance so I can make sure I know exactly how much should be in the account. Then there was a transfer out to the operating account, that $93, right, to pay the cell phone bill. And that brought our balance down to $121.75. So basically I'm marking this because the money didn't leave the account and go straight to PCS. I transferred it to another account and then paid the bill. Also, on the 4th, we had an inflow into the bills account of $205. And then we had another inflow of $5.62. And then the last transaction in this account in the first week of April was the debt payment of $5.62. And that leaves us with a balance of $326.75. All of our bills for the month of April have already been paid, and so there's nothing else to do except for put money aside for May's bills, which feels so good to me. Like, I just want to shout and give God thanks, and I am going to give God thanks when I cut off this video because it's so amazing that we're here right now. I did have 2 gift cards that I got from like doing surveys and then receipt haul because I snap receipts consistently, and so I used that $21.07 to pay towards our Metro PCS, although I still did pay $93, the regular monthly bill, because I want us to get ahead of that as much as possible too. So we already have a credit going into May. Now, taking a look at our spending tracker. I downloaded this off of Etsy from So Sweet Plans. The owner of that Etsy shop is Tracy from the Financial Freedom Diary. And I purchased some gas, right? $20. I went to CVS and I spent $7.57. I bought $12.78 worth of milk, and then I filled up again the gas tank for $40. So in week 1, in these 3 categories, we were $40 over budget for gas. We have $62.22 left over for food and $2.43 left over for household. So we're still in a positive by $24.65. So what I'm thinking, that money is not in the account. It was used for other things. Like, we made an extra debt payment, and then I went shopping, so I bought a couple of things. So, I don't know exactly if I should be starting the weekly check-in with the monthly budgeted amount or just the weekly budgeted amount, because I've been doing this for 5 years and I'm still a little bit confused about how I should start. It is a weekly check-in, so it does make sense to start with the budgeted amount for that category for the week. But then what if I'm tracking it every week, I should be tracking from the start of the month how much we budgeted for the entire month and then go from there? I don't really know. But I am tracking every dollar for these categories so I can be prepared, because in the future we're going to be budgeting a little bit differently after we get out of this savings period. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I'm not really sure. But gas, household, and food, we still have a positive balance even though we overspent in gas. And I did cover the overspending with savings from another account. And that seems to be the way I have to do it these days. So that's pretty much it. That's how we did in the first week. Not too bad. It seems kind of boring because I feel like I'm doing pretty much the same thing each week. We're giving, we're investing, we're saving a specific amount, and then we're paying our bills. So not too much extra spending besides the $16 I spent at the beauty salon getting my waxing. Again, this is my season to start taking care of myself like I used to, and hopefully get back to a normal beauty routine and just a normal, it being about me, not just as wife, not just as mom, but as Tasha. So hopefully you may still see some personal spending within this budget from me as I try to get back into the flow. But normally I do have a separate account that I spend my personal money from. All of our bills for the month have been paid. I've already set aside money for the mortgage, and I'm believing God that we're going to have the $1,800 extra in that account, so that we'll be ready when May comes. And that's it, you guys. That's how I track my expenses. We are starting week 2 with $55. Thank you so much for being here for as long as you were. I hope you found some value somewhere, anywhere throughout this video. Please don't forget to comment down below anything, an emoji, a heart, something to let me know you were here and you stayed until this point of the video. I appreciate you so very much. Continue to mind your money, manage it well, and live your lives abundantly. I'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.